rancher saved Apache sisters. Days later, their mother returned with a haunting debt to pay. The sun was high over the Arizona plains, its heat rippling across the dry land. Dust rose with every passing breeze, and the horizon seemed endless. Daniel Moreno had been up since dawn, repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. Life on the ranch was quiet, predictable, and, for him, peaceful. He liked it that way. The days were long, the work hard, but he felt a connection to the land that he had never known anywhere else. Out here, problems were simple, solutions were clear, and nothing was ever hidden for long. As he tightened a loose post, Daniel noticed movement in the distance. Two small figures were walking along the creek bed, which had dried up to a narrow, dusty line. At first, he thought they might be hikers or tourists, though that seemed unlikely in this remote stretch of land. As he squinted against the glare of the sun, he realized they were children, a girl, older, holding the hand of a younger one. Their clothes were dusty and torn, and their bare feet left small prints in the dry soil. Something about them made Daniel pause. He set his tools down and watched quietly. The older girl seemed cautious, glancing over her shoulder every few steps. The younger one clung tightly to her sister's hand, her small face streaked with dirt and tears. Daniel felt a pang in his chest. These children looked lost, scared, and alone. He stepped forward slowly, raising a hand in greeting. "Hey there," he called in a calm voice. The girls froze, their eyes wide and wary. All those stepped slightly in front of the younger, as if shielding her. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked gently, keeping his distance. The older girl's lips pressed together. She didn't answer. The younger one whimpered softly and hid her face against her sister. Daniel crouched down to seem less threatening, giving them space. "My name's Daniel," he said. "I live over there," he pointed toward the ranch house nearby. "You look like you could use some water." The girls exchanged a quick glance. The older one finally spoke, her voice small but firm. We can't go there," she said. We have to stay." Daniel nodded slowly. He didn't want to push them. He understood fear. He had felt it many times in his life, but he also knew children couldn't survive out here on their own. "I promise I won't hurt you," he said softly. "But it's hot, and you need water. You can trust me?" There was a long pause. The older girl seemed to wrestle with herself, then nodded reluctantly. Daniel smiled gently. "That's good. You did the right thing." He walked slowly toward them, stopping several feet away. The younger girl clung to her sister, still trembling. Daniel dug into his backpack and pulled out 2 water bottles, handing them over. The relief on their faces was immediate. They drank slowly, glancing at him but not speaking. "Where are you from?" Daniel asked carefully. "Do you live around here?" The older girl shook her head. "No, we're not from here," she said. We were staying with Mom, but..." Her voice faltered. The younger one looked up at Daniel, tears welling in her eyes. Daniel didn't press. Sometimes words came slowly, and he didn't want to scare them. Instead, he offered them his hand. "How about we go to the house? There's food, and you can rest in the shade." The girls hesitated. The older one looked around nervously. Finally, she took Daniel's hand, guiding the younger one along. They walked slowly, the younger child holding tightly to her sister. Daniel kept talking softly, telling them about the ranch, the animals, and the small garden behind the house. When they reached the porch, Daniel unlocked the door and motioned for them to enter. The house was simple, clean, and cool compared to the blistering heat outside. Daniel showed them where they could wash up and brought out a plate of sandwiches and fruit. The girls sat quietly, eating slowly, their eyes wide as they took in their surroundings. Daniel watched them carefully. He had seen children before, but something about these girls felt different. They were not just scared. They were carrying a weight that was older than their years. He wanted to ask, wanted to understand, but he knew he had to let them open up in their own time. After they finished eating, Daniel suggested they rest in the living room while he went to check the animals. The girls sat on the couch, quietly talking in whispers to each other. Daniel could hear fragments of their conversation, mentions of a mother, a place far away, and a fear that seemed to hang over them like a shadow. He worked outside for a while, but his mind kept drifting back to the girls. He thought about the difficult situations people sometimes faced, the struggles that were often hidden behind closed doors. He had always believed in helping where he could, and now, faced with these two small, frightened children, that belief was put to the test. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Daniel called them outside. He pointed to the corral where a few horses were grazing. "Do you want to see the horses?" he asked. The girls nodded eagerly, and for a moment their fear seemed to fade. He led them to the fence and let them watch the animals. The older girl laughed softly when a horse nudged her gently, and the younger one clapped her hands in delight. Daniel felt a smile tug at the corners of his mouth. Perhaps, he thought, they could find a little peace here after all. As the evening wore on, he brought them back to the house and settled them in for the night. He gave them blankets and pillows and promised them safety. "You're safe here," he said. "No one will hurt you." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch, listening to the wind rustle through the trees and thinking about the girls. He wondered what had happened to them, why they were out here alone, and who else might be looking for them. There was a part of him that worried, but another part knew that running in fear wouldn't solve anything. They needed stability, protection, and patience. In the quiet of the night, he heard the girls whispering to each other. Their voices were low, almost inaudible, but the fear and uncertainty in their tones tugged at his heart. Daniel knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he couldn't turn them away, not when they had no one else to rely on. Before long, the girls fell asleep, the older one holding the younger close. Daniel watched them for a few moments longer, then went inside to his own small room. He lay awake, thinking about the unexpected turn his day had taken. Out here on a quiet ranch in the middle of nowhere, he had found two children who needed him. And somehow, he knew that saving them would change his life as much as theirs. As he finally drifted to sleep, he made a silent promise. He would protect them, keep them safe, and help them find a way through whatever difficulties had brought them here. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. The world outside his ranch was waiting, and it carried dangers and challenges that even he could not yet imagine. The next morning, the ranch was alive with quiet activity. Daniel had already been up for hours, feeding the animals and checking the fences. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting long shadows across the dry plains. The girls had slept peacefully for the first time in what felt like ages. The older one, Lila, woke early and tiptoed to the kitchen, careful not to wake her sister, Maris. Daniel was preparing breakfast when he noticed them. "Good morning," he said warmly. "Sleep well?" Lila nodded shyly. Maris followed, rubbing her eyes and yawning. I had a dream," Maris whispered. "Mom was calling us, but I couldn't see her face." Daniel paused, his heart tightening. Dreams can feel very real sometimes, he said gently. But right now, you're safe. Nothing can hurt you here. The girls nodded, still quiet, and Daniel handed them each a plate of eggs and toast. They ate slowly, but with an energy that came from having real food and a safe place to be. After breakfast, Daniel suggested they help with chores. He knew that keeping them busy would ease their anxiety and give them a sense of control. "Do you want to help me feed the chickens?" he asked. Maris's face lit up. "Yes," she said, and Lila smiled faintly. They worked together, scattering grain for the chickens and gathering fresh eggs. Daniel watched them closely, noticing how naturally the girls adapted to small responsibilities. It was clear they had experience with tough times, but they were resilient. As the morning passed, the girls began to open up, talking quietly about their life before the ranch. Lila spoke cautiously, as if measuring every word. "We were staying with Mom in a small town," she said. "But she... people were mad at her. I don't know exactly what, but she left us." Daniel listened without interrupting. He understood that children often carried burdens too heavy for their age. "Sometimes adults have difficulties they can't solve," he said. "But you two, you're here now, and I'll do everything I can to help." Maris looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. "You won't let anyone take us away?" Daniel shook his head firmly.
"No, you're safe here."
The girls smiled faintly, a rare moment of ease. For Daniel, it was a small victory, a sign that trust could grow even in the most difficult circumstances. Later that afternoon, while Daniel checked on the horses, he noticed movement near the edge of the property. A figure was riding slowly along the distant dirt road. At first he thought it might be a traveler or a local, but something felt off. The rider's posture was tense, and the horse moved with a careful, cautious pace. Daniel's mind raced. Could it be someone looking for the girls? He knew he had to stay calm. Panicking would not help anyone. Instead, he quietly guided the girls to a safe spot behind the barn. "Stay here for a while," he whispered. "Don't come out until I say it's safe." Lila nodded, holding Maris close. The older girl's face was pale, and her small hands trembled slightly. Daniel reassured them, his voice steady. He wanted them to feel protected even as he scanned the horizon. The rider stopped briefly at the edge of the property, looking around. Then, after a few tense minutes, they turned and disappeared down the road. Daniel exhaled slowly. Whoever it was, they were leaving, for now. But the sense of unease lingered. That evening, after the girls had eaten and settled in, Lila spoke quietly, almost as if confessing a secret. "Mom, she owed someone something," she said. "We didn't know what it was, but she said if she didn't pay it, bad things could happen." Daniel's heart sank. He had suspected that their mother's absence was more than simple neglect, but hearing it confirmed his fear. There was a danger looming, one that the girls barely understood, but that he could not ignore. "Do you remember who she said it was?" Daniel asked gently. Lila shook her head. "No, just people in town. She said they were angry and that we had to stay hidden. That's why we ran." Daniel nodded slowly, thinking carefully. He couldn't risk calling the authorities just yet. The girls were scared, and exposing them to strangers could do more harm than good. Instead, he resolved to keep them close, keep them fed and safe, and watch for any signs of trouble. For the next few days, life at the ranch settled into a cautious routine. The girls helped with small chores, learned to feed the animals, and even tried their hands at planting seeds in the garden. They laughed occasionally, though it was often quiet and cautious. Daniel encouraged them, praising their efforts and giving gentle guidance. Despite the small joys, the tension never fully left the ranch. Every sound, every shadow in the distance made the girls jump. Daniel noticed it, and he did his best to reassure them. "It's just the wind," he would say. "Or a bird." He didn't tell them the truth, that he had spotted strangers nearby and that he couldn't be sure if the girls were truly safe yet. One afternoon, Daniel decided to take them for a walk along a nearby trail. He hoped the fresh air and open space would ease their fears. As they walked, Lila pointed to a distant hill. "That's where Mom went," she said softly. "She said she'd come back for us, but I don't think she can." Daniel stopped and looked at her. "Sometimes adults make promises they can't keep," he said carefully. "But that doesn't mean you're not loved. And it doesn't mean you're not safe here." The girls walked quietly after that, taking in the wide open landscape. Daniel watched them, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. He had never been in a situation like this before, protecting children who were not his own, guiding them through fear and uncertainty. But he knew he could not turn away. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the girls sat on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink and purple. Maris leaned against Lila, her small body relaxed for the first time in days. "Do you think Mom will come back?" Maris asked softly. Lila shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe." But Daniel said, "We're safe." "That's enough for now." Daniel stood behind them, looking out at the horizon. He thought about the challenges ahead. He knew the world outside the ranch held dangers he could not yet see. But he also knew that for these two children, this place, this quiet, sun-drenched land, was a sanctuary, and he would do everything in his power to keep it that way. As night fell, Daniel made a plan. He would strengthen the fences, keep a closer watch on the property, and ensure the girls never felt alone. He couldn't solve all the problems that had brought them here, but he could give them safety, routine, and a sense of trust. That night, after tucking the girls into bed, Daniel sat on the porch with a lantern casting a soft glow. He listened to the wind moving through the trees and thought about the days ahead. He knew that whatever challenges were coming, he had to be ready. The girls were counting on him, and he could not let them down. In the quiet of the night, the girls whispered to each other softly, sharing fears and small dreams. Daniel stayed on the porch, keeping watch, knowing that his role as protector was only just beginning. For the first time in years, he felt a different kind of responsibility, one that was heavier, yes, but also filled with a new purpose. He knew their mother would return eventually, and with her, perhaps more questions, more challenges, more danger. But for now, in the warm glow of lantern light and the calm of the desert night, the ranch was their refuge. And Daniel was determined that it would remain that way, no matter what came next. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting a warm, golden light across the dusty fields. Daniel had been awake for hours, tending to the animals and checking the fences, but his mind was not fully on his work. The past few days with Lila and Maris had been quiet in a way that was almost unnatural, and he could feel a sense of tension lingering in the air, like the calm before a storm. He noticed the girls in the kitchen, sitting quietly at the table. Lila had a thoughtful look on her face, while Mary's fidgeted with her spoon. Daniel poured himself a cup of coffee and walked over, trying to offer a sense of normalcy. "Good morning," he said gently. "How did you sleep?" "Okay," Lila replied softly. "But I keep thinking about Mom and the people she owes." Daniel nodded. He had sensed that their mother's debt was more serious than the girls fully understood. "I know it's worrying," he said, "but right now you're safe here, and no one can hurt you." Maris looked up at him, her small face anxious. "But what if she comes for us and takes us away?" Daniel crouched down to her level. "I promise," he said firmly, "I won't let anyone hurt you. You're safe here with me." For a moment, the girls seemed to relax, but the unease in their eyes told him that their mother's return would bring more complications, and Daniel was right. Later that morning, a rider appeared on the distant trail leading to the ranch. Daniel noticed the figure at the same time as the girls did. They froze, staring at the approaching horse. It was a woman, riding cautiously, her posture tense and hurried. The girls whispered to each other, their voices small and fearful. "That's her," Lila said, her voice trembling. "That's Mom." Daniel watched carefully as the woman rode closer. She looked exhausted, her clothes dusty and worn. There was a look of worry on her face, but also urgency, as if she had no choice but to be there. Daniel could see the girls' fear, and he understood their confusion. The woman before him was their mother, but she carried with her an unknown weight, troubles that had left her daughters alone until now. When the rider reached the edge of the property, she dismounted quickly, brushing dust from her clothes. She approached the girls slowly, her eyes wide with recognition and concern. "Lila, Maris," she said softly, "I've come for you. I've come to fix everything." The girls took a step back, uncertainty and fear written on their faces. Lila's voice was cautious. "Mom, we don't know if we can trust you." The woman nodded, understanding the hesitation. "I know," she said quietly. "I've made mistakes. I've left you alone, and I can't take that back. But I promise, I'm here now, and I need your help." Daniel stayed nearby, observing. He knew this moment was delicate. The girls were confused and scared, and their mother's return could either bring relief or create more problems. He decided to stay silent for now, letting the mother and daughter speak first. The mother knelt down to the girls' level, her hands open and calm. "I owe people," she said softly. "I didn't know how to handle it, and I was afraid. But you don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm here to make sure you're safe." Maris looked at her mother with wide eyes. "But will they come after us?" The mother shook her head. "Not if we are smart. I've thought of a plan. I'll fix it, and then we can be together safely." Daniel could see that her words were genuine, but he also sensed that the situation was far from simple. There were unknown dangers in the town, debts owed to people who might not be forgiving. The mother carried a tension that was heavy, almost visible in the way she moved and spoke. The girls hesitated, but finally Lila spoke. We want to trust you." But Daniel said, "We are safe here." The mother looked at Daniel, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "I see," she said quietly. "You've been protecting them. Thank you. I can't explain everything yet, but I need your help too." Daniel nodded slowly. "I want them safe first. Everything else comes second." The mother took a deep breath and then began to explain in careful, quiet words. She owed a debt, she said, to people in town who were strict and unforgiving. She had tried to manage it on her own, but it had become too dangerous. She was determined to handle it now, and she needed time, space, and honesty to do it without putting the girls in harm's way. Lila and Maris listened quietly. Their faces were a mixture of relief and worry. They were happy to see their mother, but they were also frightened by the unknown challenges she spoke of. Daniel could see the conflict in their eyes, trust versus fear. Over the next few hours, the mother and Daniel worked carefully to build a plan. The mother would return to town later in the day to address her debt, while Daniel stayed with the girls to ensure their safety. They prepared supplies, made arrangements, and discussed every possible scenario. It was clear that every step had to be cautious, thoughtful, and deliberate. By mid-afternoon, the mother decided it was time to leave temporarily. She hugged her daughters tightly, her face a mixture of relief and sorrow. "I'll be back soon," she said softly. "Stay with Daniel. Be brave. Trust him." Lila clung to her mother. "We'll wait," she said, her voice small but firm. Maris hid her face against her mother's shoulder, tears quietly running down her cheeks. "Don't leave us too long," she whispered. The mother kissed their foreheads, standing slowly. "I won't," she said. "I promise. Be strong." She mounted her horse and rode away, leaving Daniel and the girls on the porch. The quiet that followed was heavy, filled with uncertainty. The girls looked up at Daniel, fear and hope mingling in their eyes. Daniel knelt beside them, placing his hands on their shoulders. "She's trying to fix things," he said gently. "And you're safe here. I'll make sure of it." For the rest of the evening, Daniel focused on creating a calm environment. He prepared dinner, told gentle stories, and encouraged the girls to focus on small, positive things: the sound of the wind, the stars appearing in the sky, the animals settling for the night. Slowly, their fear began to ease, replaced by a cautious sense of security. As night fell, the girls sat together under a blanket on the porch, staring at the stars. Lila spoke softly, her voice thoughtful. "She's trying, Daniel. I can tell. But it's scary. I don't know what will happen." Daniel nodded. "Life can be scary sometimes," he said. "But courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about moving forward even when you are." Maris looked up at him, small hands clutching the blanket. "Anne will be brave," she whispered. Daniel smiled gently. "Yes, we'll be brave together." He stayed on the porch long after the girls went to bed, watching the horizon where their mother had disappeared. He thought about the coming days and the challenges that awaited them all. The mother's debt was real, and the people she owed were unknown and potentially dangerous. But he also knew something else. Love, trust, and determination could protect them as much as any plan. Daniel's mind wandered through the events of the day. He reflected on how quickly life could change, how two small children could enter his life and alter its course in a single moment. He felt a deep responsibility not just to protect them physically, but to guide them emotionally, to help them understand courage, trust, and hope in the face of uncertainty. That night, the ranch was quiet, but the air was filled with anticipation. The girls slept more peacefully than before, trusting Daniel to watch over them. And Daniel, though exhausted, remained alert, thinking about the next steps, the coming challenges, and the unseen dangers that might approach. He knew the mother's return would bring answers and perhaps more questions. But for now, the ranch was a safe place, and Daniel was determined that it would stay that way no matter what came next. The night stretched on, calm but expectant, and for the first time in days, Daniel felt the weight of hope alongside responsibility. He understood that life was unpredictable, that people sometimes made mistakes, and that even the most complicated situations could be faced with patience and care. And with that thought, he sat back, watching the stars glimmer in the desert sky ready for whatever the next day would bring. The next morning, the ranch felt unusually quiet. Daniel woke early, as he always did, moving carefully through the small kitchen so as not to wake the girls. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stepped outside, watching the sun rise over the plains. The morning air was cool and calm, but Daniel could feel the weight of the coming days pressing on him. Their mother's debt was still unresolved, and the thought of people from town coming after the family lingered like a shadow in his mind. He checked the fences and the animals moving with a quiet efficiency. Even with the girls under his care, he couldn't ignore the possibility of danger. The ranch was isolated, but that didn't mean they were completely safe. Daniel had learned long ago that the world often reached out, even to the most remote places. The girls joined him soon after, their small feet crunching on the gravel as they carried water for the animals. Lila had a serious expression on her face, while Maris was quiet and thoughtful. The events of the previous day, the arrival of their mother, the explanation of her debt, had left a mark on both of them. They had been happy to see her, but uncertainty and fear still lingered. Daniel knelt beside Lila as she filled the water trough. "How are you feeling today?" he asked gently. She hesitated. I'm worried," she admitted. "Mom's trying to fix things, but what if it doesn't work? What if the people she owes find her and us?" Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We don't know what will happen, but we'll handle it together. The important thing is that we stay calm and think carefully about each step." Maris looked up at him, nodding. "We'll stay with you," she said. "We'll be brave, like you told us." Daniel smiled softly. "Yes, brave and careful. That's the best combination." After breakfast, Daniel decided to make a plan for the day. He wanted to ensure the girls felt safe while also keeping watch over the ranch. He suggested they work on small chores together, gathering eggs, feeding the animals, and tidying up the garden. It was a way to keep their minds occupied and create a sense of routine. As they worked, Daniel noticed something unusual. Tracks in the dirt, faint but clear, showed that someone had walked near the edge of the property during the night. His heart tightened, but he didn't panic. He knew that whoever it was had not come close enough to pose an immediate threat, but their presence confirmed his fears. Someone in town was aware of the family's situation and was watching. Daniel decided to keep this to himself for now. The girls didn't need to know every detail. They only needed to feel safe. Instead, he focused on teaching them how to be aware of their surroundings in simple, non-frightening ways. He showed them how to notice unusual sounds, watch for movement at a distance, and stay calm in the face of uncertainty. By midday, the sun was high and the heat began to press down on the ranch. Daniel brought the girls inside for a break, offering cold water and fruit. Lila and Maris sat quietly, thinking about their mother and the debt she owed. "I wonder what she's doing in town," Lila said softly. Is she okay?" Daniel considered his words carefully. "Do, do, 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 do." "She's doing her best," he said. "Sometimes adults have complicated problems, but right now she's focused on fixing them. We can trust that she's trying to do the right thing." Maris nodded slowly. "I hope she comes back soon," she whispered. Daniel smiled gently. "She will, and when she does, we'll be ready for whatever comes next." Later in the afternoon, Daniel noticed a rider approaching from the road. This time, it wasn't their mother. A man on horseback rode slowly, scanning the area. Daniel's instincts told him to be cautious. He quietly guided the girls to a safe spot behind the barn out of view. The man stopped near the edge of the property, looking around as if searching for something. Daniel stayed hidden, observing. After a few tense minutes, the man turned and rode away. Though there had been no confrontation, Daniel could feel the tension in the air. The people from town were becoming aware of the family's location, and the situation was growing more complicated. That evening, after dinner, Daniel sat with the girls on the porch. The sky was painted with warm colors as the sun set. He could sense their worry, and he wanted to give them comfort and reassurance. "Do you want to talk about your mother?" he asked gently. Lila nodded. I just don't understand everything. I know she's trying, but it feels like there's more we don't know." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes adults have things they have to handle quietly, but what matters most is that we stay calm and think carefully. We can't control everything, but we can control what we do here, together." Maris looked up at him. "Can we help?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "Yes, by staying safe, staying calm, and being brave, you are helping more than you realize." That night, Daniel checked the perimeter of the ranch carefully, ensuring all gates were secure and no one had approached while the girls slept. He felt the weight of responsibility heavily, but he also felt determination. He would not allow fear to rule their lives. He would find a way to protect them, no matter the challenges ahead. The following days were filled with a careful balance of routine and vigilance. Daniel maintained the ranch, the girls helped with chores, and he watched for any signs of trouble. Occasionally they would see figures at a distance, people who might be watching but not approaching. The tension was never fully gone, but Daniel worked hard to keep the girls' days as normal as possible. One afternoon, the mother returned briefly, riding cautiously toward the ranch. She dismounted quickly, her face showing exhaustion but also determination. She explained that she had managed to handle part of her debt and that she was working to ensure nothing dangerous would come near her daughters. Daniel listened, impressed by her resolve, but he could see that the work was not yet complete. "We have to be careful," she said quietly. "Not everything is finished, but you've done a wonderful job keeping them safe." Thank you, Daniel." Daniel nodded. "We'll continue to be cautious," he said. "They're safe here." "That won't change." The mother left again, promising to return soon with a solution that would finally protect the family. The girls waved, holding on to each other, and Daniel felt a mixture of relief and continued concern. The danger had not disappeared, but there was hope, and hope was powerful. As night fell, Daniel stayed on the porch, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch. The animals were settling down, and the girls were asleep inside. He thought about the coming days, the challenges that still awaited, and the need for patience, vigilance, and courage. He realized that this experience was teaching all of them something important: trust, responsibility, and the quiet strength it took to face uncertainty. He felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that his role as protector was not just about keeping them physically safe, but also about helping them navigate fear and uncertainty with courage and care. The ranch was quiet, but the tension of the outside world was never far away. Daniel knew that the mother's debt could still bring unexpected challenges, and that the family's safety depended on careful planning and thoughtful action. But for now, they had a place to rest, to grow stronger, and to find courage in each other. As the stars appeared in the sky, Daniel felt a quiet determination. The journey was far from over, and there were many obstacles ahead. But he also knew that together, with patience, vigilance, and courage, they could face whatever challenges came their way. And in that moment, as he watched the night settle over the plains, Daniel felt a sense of hope. The ranch, the girls, and even their mother's return had brought a new purpose to his life. It was a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, protection, care, and love could create a sanctuary, a place where fear was met with courage and challenges were met with determination. He stayed on the porch, watching over the ranch, ready for whatever the next day would bring. The morning air was crisp and calm over the ranch, but Daniel knew the quiet could be deceiving. He had been awake long before the sun rose, checking the fences, the gates, and the animals. Every sound, every shadow, kept him alert. The past days had taught him that safety was never guaranteed, and that even the most peaceful place could face challenges at any moment. Lila and Maris had been unusually quiet that morning. They were aware that today might bring answers, or more complications. Their mother had returned the night before, briefly, and had spoken of plans to resolve the remaining issues from her debt. But the uncertainty weighed heavily on the girls, and they looked to Daniel for reassurance. "Are you both ready for the day?" Daniel asked gently, crouching to their level. Lila nodded, though her lips pressed together nervously. We are," she said softly. Maris clutched her sister's hand. "We want to help," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "You are helping," he said, "by being brave, by staying calm, and by trusting that we'll face whatever comes together." They spent the morning tending to the ranch as usual. Daniel tried to keep the routine as normal as possible, knowing that stability could ease the girls' anxiety. They fed the chickens, checked the garden, and helped gather firewood. The small tasks gave them a sense of control and purpose, even as the tension of the outside world remained. By midday, their mother returned again, this time with a look of determination on her face. She rode cautiously, her eyes scanning the horizon before guiding her horse toward the ranch. When she dismounted, she quickly hugged the girls, their relief palpable. "I'm ready," she said softly, her voice steady. "Today we resolve this. Together." Daniel nodded. He had been preparing for this moment. He had reinforced the ranch, ensured that the girls were safely inside, and thought through every possible scenario. He knew that the mother's debt, while important, could not overshadow the need to protect the girls first. The mother explained that she had arranged a meeting with the people she owed, and that she would handle the negotiations herself. Daniel listened carefully, observing her movements, noting her calm determination, but also her careful vigilance. He knew that even though she was brave, the situation remained delicate. As the afternoon sun climbed high, the family prepared to face the challenge. The mother left briefly, accompanied by Daniel at a distance, to ensure nothing unexpected occurred. Lila and Maris watched from the porch, holding each other close, trusting Daniel's judgment, but still anxious about what might happen. Daniel stayed with them, maintaining a watchful eye, ready to intervene if necessary. He explained to the girls in simple terms that their mother was resolving a problem and that they should remain patient and calm. He wanted them to understand courage and that even in difficult situations, staying composed was often the strongest action. Hours passed slowly. The girls grew restless but remained close to Daniel. He distracted them with small tasks around the house and garden, telling stories about the animals and the land. Every now and then he would glance at the horizon, watching for signs of their mother's safe return. Finally, as the sun began to lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the mother returned. Her expression was a mix of relief and exhaustion, but there was a light in her eyes that had not been there before. "It's done," she said quietly, dismounting from her horse. "The debt has been resolved. There is no danger anymore." Lila and Maris ran to her, hugging her tightly. Their relief was visible, tears of happiness and release flowing freely. Daniel watched them, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and relief himself. The tension that had hung over the ranch for days was finally lifting. The mother looked at Daniel with gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. "I couldn't have done this without you. You kept them safe when I couldn't be there." Daniel shook his head. "You were brave too," he said, "and they needed both of us." That evening, the ranch felt peaceful for the first time in days. The animals were calm, the wind moved gently through the trees, and the girls were laughing softly as they helped their mother with small chores. The tension had lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of safety and relief. As they sat together on the porch, Daniel reflected on the events of the past week. Two small children had entered his life unexpectedly, bringing both responsibility and purpose. Their mother had returned, facing her fears and resolving her debts, and the family was now united and safe. The experience had taught him and the girls many lessons about courage, trust, and the power of calm determination. Lila leaned against her mother, her voice soft. "I'm glad we're together now. I was so scared before, but now I feel safe." Her mother kissed her forehead. "You are safe," she said. "And you will always be safe. We'll face challenges together from now on." Maris looked up at Daniel. "Thank you," she said simply, "for keeping us safe." Daniel smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility ease slightly. "You were brave too," he said. "Bravery isn't just about facing danger. It's about staying calm, helping each other, and never giving up." As night fell, the family sat together under the stars. The quiet of the desert surrounded them, and for the first time in days, there was no fear in the air. Daniel felt a deep sense of contentment. The girls were safe, their mother was present, and the ranch was peaceful once again. He knew that life would continue to have challenges. There would be new problems, new responsibilities, and moments of fear. But he also knew that together they could face anything. The lessons of patience, trust, and courage had been learned, and they would guide the family in the days ahead. The girls eventually went to bed, holding on to their mothers and Daniel's hands as they drifted off to sleep. The mothers stayed close to them, watching over them with a calm and protective presence. Daniel remained on the porch, his eyes scanning the horizon one last time, before he finally allowed himself to relax. In the quiet of the night, he thought about how unexpected life could be, how strangers could enter your life, how challenges could appear suddenly, and how courage and trust could change everything. He understood now that protection was more than keeping someone safe. It was about nurturing hope, creating stability, and helping others face uncertainty with confidence. The stars twinkled overhead and the desert seemed at peace. Daniel knew that the family's story had reached a turning point, and that they would move forward together, stronger and more connected than ever. The ranch, once just a place of work and solitude, had become a sanctuary, a place where fear was met with bravery and uncertainty was met with careful guidance and love. And in that moment, Daniel felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had protected the girls, guided them through fear, and helped reunite a family. The journey had been difficult, filled with tension and uncertainty, but it had also been rewarding. The lessons learned, the courage shown, and the bonds formed would remain with all of them forever. The night stretched on, calm and serene. Daniel finally stepped inside, joining the family. The girls were asleep, peaceful at last, and their mother sat nearby, exhausted but smiling. Together they were safe, Together, they had overcome the uncertainty that had loomed over them, and together they would face whatever the future held, knowing that courage, patience, and love could guide them through anything. The ranch, the girls, and their mother had survived the trials, and the story that had begun with fear and uncertainty had ended with safety, trust, and hope. And for Daniel, it was a reminder that even in the most unexpected circumstances, the power of care, bravery, and determination could create a sanctuary that would endure no matter what challenges the world might bring.